How's it going, everybody? Welcome to 1IQ Sports Talk. Brendan here for the Chicago Bears game recap, where they just had an absolute shocker against the Washington Commanders. And this video is being recorded on Tuesday, as I've allowed myself to kind of just sit back and kind of think about this game ultimately. And I I don't really have words for this one. This is a game the Bears never should have won, and this is also a game they never should have lost. Going into this particular week, I said the Bears were going to win this game, and it didn't matter who was going to be playing quarterback. The Bears were going to walk away with a pretty easy victory. Reasons why I said that: Washington doesn't have a great defense. I think they have the 24th ranked defense in the NFL this year so far throughout 8 weeks, and I don't believe their offense is as good as everyone is simply making it out to be, and they've just played a lot of bad defenses. And when they finally went up against a good defense, look at what happened. Um, and at this point, I just want the Bears defense. They're going to be able to get the stops. I know the Commanders are going to get yards because, like, I will say the Commanders do have a good offense. They just haven't gone up against a defense like this, and that's kind of where my focus should, or my comments should lead a little bit more towards on that one. But this Bears offense, I looked at it when their secondary doesn't have the guys that can cover the wide receivers that the Bears have, the tight ends the Bears have, the running backs the Bears have. I think their defensive line might be able to get a little bit of pressure on Caleb, but nothing that I'm terribly worried about. And let's start with the offense today. Again, I'm gonna be all over the place with this one because this game was just such an all over the place type situation. But let's talk about the offense. The fact that you have yet again slow starts to the game, it's unacceptable. The fact that you have three and out what feels like in every single game to start your offense is not the way that you go about it. You can't have that. You need to go out there and at least be putting up points and moving the ball. You can't get the ball at the 30-yard line, go three and out, and have Torrey Taylor kick the ball and basically put them at their own 25-yard line, essentially saying to the opposing team, yeah, we didn't want to do this first drive. And that's exactly what it was. Shane Waldron, I, again, I said the last few weeks against the Jags and against the Panthers, it's great that you were doing this and making these calls against these teams, but you need to show that you can do it against better teams. And like I said, the Commanders, I don't believe, have a great defense. They're the 24th ranked defense in the NFL right now. They are not particularly great. You should be able to do that against that particular defense. You should be able to have a day. Yes, Dan Quinn and is a defensive minded guy, but the defense is what the defense is right now. Yeah, sure, you're going from the 30th ranked defense or the 29th ranked defense to the 24th. That's not a big jump. That's not a big gap. That is just simply a situation of where you look at that and I look at that and I go, it is just simply not good enough. And it's it makes it even more frustrating watching that offense just continuously not get the playmakers going. And I frankly I don't believe this was a Caleb Williams fault game. I don't think Caleb played particularly well, but I also don't think he had a lot of help. Pretty much on every single drop back in the first half of the game, he was being pressured. He was being just under duress immediately. The fact that this team only gave up the 2 sacks in this game is massively impressive. Like, it was impressive to watch that. It was only 2 sacks given up with how bad the pressure coming at Caleb. He was having to rush throws, and I think the nerves were a little bit on display in this game. So like I will say that. And I think some of the overthrows we saw from some of the earlier games this season kind of creeped back into it. But again, I look at it and go, the Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator and the offensive play caller, wasn't allowing his guys to get help or get open. The offensive line wasn't spectacular. Tevin Jenkins had a good game, but even then he got injured, went back in, got injured again. The offensive line was just a mess. The only bright spot that we actually saw in this game was DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, the 18 carries, 129 yards, that 56-yard, that pretty much changed the game for the Bears. I looked at that and went, okay, this is where that spark comes in. And again, I've said this the last 2 years for the Bears, last 2.5 years, or actually, I'll say last year and this year. When they start to gain a little bit of momentum later in the games, that is when they start to really play well, is when they start to just get that little bit more. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, DeAndre Swift got that little bit of momentum. But then you immediately have a play where you try to hand off the ball to your backup center in Doug Kramer. Doug Kramer, I've been enjoying seeing him as a fullback, as a blocking fullback. And you've been using that nicely, and you're getting Roschon Johnson available to go through the line with Doug Kramer back there. I still think you should have Doug Kramer playing that fullback spot, especially since you cut Kari Blasingame last week. But you're not going to hand him the ball off on the 1-2 yard line, especially when Roschon Johnson this year is the only guy within 5 yards to have a 100% successful touchdown rate. So every single time that Roschon Johnson has rushed the ball within 5 yards, he's scored a touchdown. Now, I know that's not going to happen every single game. That's not going to continue. But when you have a guy that's been doing that, and Roschon Johnson did get a rushing touchdown in this game, so he was capable of doing that, you might as well have just handed the ball off like what we've seen you do throughout the regular part of the year. Doug Kramer, he just goes through the line, opens up a hole for Roschon Johnson. Boom. We score another touchdown. We're up. And, Caleb looked comfortable in the fourth quarter. He did everything that he needed to do. And again, you get the ball back after that fumble recovery and you go down and score. Again, you in the second time you handed the ball off to Roschon Johnson and look what happens. He scores a touchdown. The offense was, it looked like it was just a little too much until the fourth quarter. Like it felt like the fourth quarter was when everyone finally calmed down. The usage of the players in this game, again, not using Cole Kmet. He's one of the best tight ends in the league. He's shown that this year that he can be, I'm not going to say he's a top 5 tight end, but he's getting closer to that range. And you targeted him once in this game. Now, looking back at the tape, you can see a few plays where Caleb had Cole Kmet open and he chose to go a different route. But you can say that with basically every single player on every single team in every single game, of where a player is open but the quarterback chooses to go a different way. But you should be trying to find ways to scheme Cole Kmet open, especially with Bobby Wagner just rushing up the middle from his linebacker spot to bring that extra pressure. Just go, okay, we know that the linebacking core of Washington is rushing us more. Cole Kmet is just going to find that seam. You might only get 5-6 yards out of that play because the safety comes up and blocks that. Or maybe you could get a big explosive play. You just don't know. But here's the thing, is that if they're going to give you the free 5 to 6 yards, you take the free 5 to 6 yards. And Caleb has been doing a really good job at that these last few weeks, and they just weren't doing it. DJ Moore wasn't schemed up enough. I think when you have a guy like DJ Moore, he should not have 4 targets in a game. He should have upwards of 10 every single game. And that's not Caleb. That's a schematic thing. You should be scheming up ways to get your superstar wide receiver open and available. And it's just bad, man. It is just horrible. The one bright spot was there was no passing interceptions, or there was no passing turnovers in this game. They gave the fumble to Caleb in this one, and I guess by the letter of the law, it's a fumble by Caleb because the snap was poorly exchanged. But regardless, whatever, it was just a bad play. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, this is again, I knew coming into this game that the Commanders' offense was going to be able to move yards and push down the field. Why? Because they do that against every defense, and even the best defenses in the NFL, they allow teams to move the ball when it is a good defense, but it comes down to what are you like in the red zone. And this is where this Bears defense really makes its money. They did not allow the Commanders to score a touchdown in the red zone. The only touchdown that they were able to get was the Hail Mary at the end of the game. Defense played, for the most part, pretty well against a really tough team. Again, you're missing Kyler Gordon, you're missing Jaquan Brisker. Those aren't easy positions to fill. Those are guys, when they are out, significantly hurt the defense. Because again, Kyler Gordon is one of the better nickel corners, slot corners, whatever you want to call it. He's up there probably in the top 5 for that discussion. And Jaquan Brisker, he's emerging when he's healthy as one of the best safeties in the NFL. Like he is that guy. And when you miss those guys, it really is difficult. Again, the run defense continues to still kind of be a little bit of a problem. Again, Austin Eckler, the 52 yards, but Brian Robinson Jr., 65. Both of those guys having some stuff. And you know Jaden Daniels was going to get yards. He had the 8 carries for 52. But like the run defense still needs work this year, and I think it will potentially get better throughout the year. But if that's the only real weakness of this defense, you're probably going to be pretty happy. Montez Sweat, he made his presence very well known in this game. Finally, I've been kind of asking where he's ultimately been throughout this year. He had the sack, and again, I'm just trying to take a look at his stats throughout this year. He has 3.5 sacks in 8 games. Like I have been very much disappointed with Montez Sweat this year, because when you bring a guy in and he shows you what he did last year, he got the 6.5 sacks as a Chicago Bear last year, and he was 12.5 total last year for just his overall stats, and you pay him the bunch of money that you do. And don't get me wrong, like I think Montez Sweat is a big factor of why this defense works as well as it does. And he's facing a ton of double teams and this, that, and the other thing. But the point at the end of the day is that you still need to produce and get points, and get those numbers. Sure, his pressures are up there, but I look at it and I go, we need someone who, sure, he's going to get double teamed, but he's also going to still produce. And with only the 3.5 sacks this year, I'm left wanting more. Again, we look at Jalen Johnson, best corner in the NFL. I truly believe that. And we never hear about Jalen Johnson or worrying about where he is. Sure, he's not getting the interceptions, but no one's throwing his way. Like that's just the simple truth of the matter, is that Jalen Johnson just simply doesn't get the ball thrown his way, so he's not going to get interceptions because he's too good. And smart offensive coaches will say wherever Jalen Johnson is on the field, you don't go to. But one of the big problems that I had in this game was the constant watching of Terry McLaurin on Tyreek Stevenson. And to me, that's a coaching issue of knowing that they have an elite wide receiver and you are putting your number 2 corner on him. Now, I don't know if this is a situation of where Jalen's on the left or right side and he stays on that side for the whole game, and same thing with Tyreek Stevenson, but if you have a guy like Jalen Johnson, who is the best corner in football, you put him on the top receiver every single week. We know Jalen Johnson has said he wants to do that. So why weren't you doing that? There was too many times I'm looking at it going, all right, Terry McLaurin is out there up against Tyreek Stevenson. Tyreek Stevenson, I think, is a good corner. This game, we'll talk about him a little bit more, but you can't ultimately put him up against Terry McLaurin when you have the best corner in football. Just insanely frustrating. And you just look at the end of the game. Like there's no real words for it. At the end of the day, this game for the Chicago Bears, the reason that they lost was coaching. I have had to say this comment way too many times in my life as a Chicago Bears fan, and way too many times with this Matt Eberflus led team. I said it in year number one. It's coaching issues. Sure, he's a rookie head coach, but there are things that he's doing that are simply not acceptable for any coach to do. And then year two, last year, I would often sit back and go, you look at the Cleveland game, you look at the Lions, one of the Lions games, you look at the Broncos game, you just sit back and go, those were coaching games where you lost those games due to coaching. And then there was a handful of other games where you're looking at going, you lost those games due to coaching. You lost the Colts game this year due to coaching. You know, the Texans game, that was just a bad game all around from all aspects of it. And this was a bad game all around, but you can't lose as many games as you have in the last few years from coaching. If it's a player situation, sure, I can understand it. But when you're not putting your guys in the proper situations, from the offensive perspective or the defensive perspective, that is coaching malpractice. And we're seeing that yet again from this coaching staff. I never wanted Eberflus to be back this year. They kept him. You have to live with it. But it's kind of getting to the point of just simply inexcusable in this game, in this day and age, of just continuously looking and going, oh yeah, like he had himself a bad game. And we talk about that. If you have a player who's out there and, you know, through 2.5 years at this point, and he's a constant starter, and you go, oh, like he was a bad game. Like more than half of his games were bad, and you grade it, you just go, he's a bad player. You have to say that about coaches as well, and that's where we lean for Eberflus. It's where you lean on with Waldron. Those are the two main culprits. But again, at the end of the game, when you know Washington has to basically go the entire length of the field, and with the last two plays, you basically giving them free 15 yards. And you listen to Eberflus at the end of the game going, we didn't think that mattered. And you listen to Dan Quinn and he goes, that was the play that led us to win this game. Now, it wasn't the play that won us the game, but that play mattered a ton. And I'm sitting back going, you could hear it on the broadcast with Romo. No, normally I'm criticizing Romo a lot because I don't think he does enough research, but he has a lot of great football insights. I think he should honestly be more of a coach as opposed to a broadcaster, but that's a completely different story. You just listen to the way that he's talking, goes, you see the amount of space that they're giving. If you don't allow them to have that play, then guess what? Daniels can't make that 65 to 75 yard pass with hurt ribs. Now, if he was fully healthy, even then you're probably still questioning whether he's going to be able to get it into the end zone with accuracy. But with the injured ribs, there's no way that he's making that throw. And you, even if they only gain 5 plays, you're still making it really tricky. And the fact that you had the 3 timeouts at the end of the game, you didn't just sit back, call a timeout, just get everyone calmed down and situated. Again, the time was stopped at that point. Like, you could use the timeouts to just get everyone calmed down. And the fact that Caleb Williams, you can see Caleb Williams saying to Flus on the sideline, going like they have too many free yards. You should bring our corners up. And then you can see Eberflus on the sidelines, literally calling the corners up. That's a time when you just call timeout and you go, okay, timeout, 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 and you just bring everyone in. You get it reassessed and go, hey, my bad on that play call. Let's bring everyone in. Let's not allow them to have those free, easy yards to put them in a position for a easier Hail Mary. And then the Hail Mary call was, again, a situation where you call timeouts. If you don't call timeout for the second last play, call timeout before the Hail Mary. Sit everyone down and go, okay, have a breath. This is the plan. No one is allowed to be farther than us in the end zone. If they want to dink and dime it, sure, that's fine. We have the players that we can use to tackle. They're going to have to beat us in space as opposed to through the air. Just horrible, horrible coaching right there. Again, coaching malpractice. But now talking about Tyreek Stevenson in this game, because he had himself a horrible, horrible game. I don't know what the numbers were, but it was over 100 plus yards. He had a handful of catches put against him. I had the touchdown grab against him earlier in the game, or no, he had a big catch that was almost a touchdown in that game. And then ultimately, he was the one who tipped the ball up in the air and allowed that one to get caught for the touchdown. And just the blatant, just running back. And, he said he wasn't taunting fans. I don't care. It looked like you were taunting, you were celebrating with Bears fans, whatever. Focus on the play. Think about the win after you get the win. Don't be doing this nonsense of just running back and all of this crap and blah, 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 blah. Like, it was just horrific. And the fact that he had that stupid penalty, I think he had a handful of penalties in this game. The one where he's literally taking his finger and jamming it in the other guy's face mask. Just horrifically stupid stuff. I love Tyreek Stevenson. I said him coming into this season, he would be a lot of teams' number one corner. I still believe that. I think he has the ability to be a number one corner in this league. It's just he's playing beside the best corner in football. He just needs to get his head right. But that game, to me, it is one of those things where with that play in that game at that moment, you have to sit him down next week. You go listen. Everything that happened. Your play, the penalties, the taunting at the end of the game that ultimately cost us. We don't care if Kyler Gordon or Jaquan Brisker are back in this week. Please, hopefully they are back at the end of next week or going into next week's game. But you just sit them down and go, listen, you are benched today. We're not going to have you as an inactive. You are going to be dressed, but you are not touching the field. Tyrell Smith, same draft class as you, corner from Minnesota. Like, we know he's a damn good corner. When Tyreek and Jalen both had their injury issues last year, he came in and played really, really well. Tyrell Smith should get the start over Tyreek Stevenson. That it's just simple as that. And you go, like, this is your punishment from all of that stupid stuff. But again, going back to the coaching stuff, I knew I was just going to be all over the place in this one. Is when you look at the coaching situation that or at least that I'm currently looking at with this, in coming off of a bye week, I always say when you come off of a bye week, you should be the most prepared team in the NFL. You should know exactly what the opponent's team is going to do. It is almost inexcusable losing a game coming off of a bye. You have 2 weeks to prepare. The only way is that if the other team has 2 weeks to prepare for you as well. And I don't know if we've ever, I'm sure it's happened where two teams coming off of the same bye face each other. But again, it's a situation where you are a team that is coming off of a bye. You had 2 weeks to get prepared and you put a dud like this on the field. I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, and I'm going to say it again. This is coaching malpractice. It is just horrifically, horrifically bad. I know the Bears do not fire coaches in season, or at least fire head coaches in season. But this is one of those games where you get back to Chicago after that game and go, listen, man, you're done. We got to fire you. That is just simply not good enough. And for that reason, and that reason alone, I have ultimately made the decision that until this coaching staff is off of this Chicago Bears team, I won't be watching their games. Because as a fan, it is just too much of an annoyance to know that this team, the roster that is constructed, is good enough to be a playoff team. Because it is. Sure, there's problems with the offensive line, but you look at Washington, we looked at Washington at the beginning of the year and said Jane Daniels is going to get killed back there behind that offensive line. No one thought the offensive line of the Commanders was going to be better than the Bears this year. Coaching matters, and until, like I said, until this team removes the current coaching staff. I think Eric Washington is probably the one guy that you can say is, I would say you can keep him. You can keep him. And Richard Hightower, I don't have an issue with either. But the offensive coaching staff and Matt Eberflus with his tone setting, I can't watch this team and support this team until those guys are gone. I'm still going to be doing recaps and just it's going to be a lot more simple, and it's just going to be like, hey, the Bears either won this game or lost this game, but at the moment I can't entertain watching this team with this coaching staff here because it is too frustrating. It is too annoying. I'm going to miss watching Caleb Williams play, but it's going to be better. And I think if you're a Chicago Bears fan, a sensible Chicago Bears fan, or even an unsensible Chicago Bears fan, just sit back. Unless you have tickets to a game, just don't watch them. Don't. Don't give them the time of day. Go watch another team. Go watch the Lions. You want to watch a team that has been bad for years and years and years and years, and then figured it out with their GM who hired the smart coaches and brought in the right players and did this, and this. That's a team you should go watch. I think Ryan Poles is a good general manager. He's had his issues. That's a whole different discussion, but I don't think Ryan Poles is the problem. I think the big problem was that he kept Eberflus on last year. But my God, this is just simply unacceptable. And like I said, I won't be watching. I'll still do game recaps every single week because I think it's good to have. But like I said, I won't personally be sitting down to watch these games because what's the point? What's the point of watching coaches just simply be too stupid to do their job properly? But I'm Brendan. Thank you all for watching today's video. Please make sure to like and subscribe, comment on the video as it helps us out a ton. But till next time, peace.